I'm glad you brought that point up. Do those liens get paid first? I mean, is the goal to clear title, so to speak? Is that a method to get you closer to be able to sell it in US dollars with lien free? Is that a way?
Yeah, one of the things that we wanted to prevent is for people to basically take the money and run, that take the money and run bit. And, you know, we have found that if they're already underwater with their real estate and then they're putting money back into the property without being mindful of their liens and loans, it's not good for any investor. So in order to protect the investors or the buyers of tokens, we're asking that the liens and debts on the property are paid off as well. And that's all put in the smart contracts as far as what liens and debts are on the real estate property. And a lot of times the sellers of tokens, property owners coming to us saying, you know, we need to get out of, we're in pre-foreclosure and we want to tokenize our real estate assets to get out of pre-foreclosure. And for 5 years, we're going to pay an annual 8% ROI to our token holders. We're going to raise $500,000. We're going to pay off our liens and debts. We're going to rent the property back to ourselves, or maybe we turn it into a rental. And then our token holders will benefit by an 8% ROI annually for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we'll buy back the tokens, or if they decide to sell them or trade them along the blockchain, that buyback is no longer in place, but they would have the benefit of buying, selling, and trading tokens. So the buyer isn't locked into buying and holding. They can move them around, and it's actually in the seller's best interest for them to move them around, because the seller of tokens gets basis points every time their tokens are moved along the blockchain, and so does TerraMint. But in order to protect the investors and to protect the sellers, we have, you know, standards of what to expect when you're buying tokens. And let's say that you own your real estate by your name, right? It's owned by you, and you want to tokenize. You want to raise $500,000, and we tell the token holders, well, that's going to pay off your note of $200,000. That's going to pay off your tax lien of $15,000. And then you're going to take the rest of the monies to have a trust account to improve the property, right, as needed, right? So you have some that are sent to a trust account. The other that's remaining is your money. It's your money to do what you wish to. There's really not a lot of stipulation on that.
Okay, let me ask you this process. Okay, at a home refinance, at a closing, if let's say you're refinancing, you're borrowing $300,000, and your current loan balance is $200,000. The bank does not give you $300,000 and says, okay, now you pay the $200,000. They make sure that $200,000 is paid. In tokenization, is there an automatic process such as that where it's done without your control, or do you have access to the tokenized, I guess, returns? Is that the right phrase? Tokenized, what's the right word? Do you have access to those amounts, and then it's just you pay? I mean, is anyone concerned about paying off liens? Is it done automatically, or it's left up to the individual homeowner to do that?
So if there's a title exchange, and most of the time there is, because we've found that a lot of times the property being tokenized isn't in the correct ownership for the life of the tokenization process. So there has to be a title exchange into a different entity. And through that process, the liens are paid typically through escrow.
So okay, now I'm understanding. So the individual homeowner, do they transfer to the LLC before the tokenization, or it sounds like they must you have to be an LLC to tokenize at all?
Right. So, but you're going to buy it from yourself, basically. If you're not going to actually sell it to somebody, you're going to buy it from yourself. And the cleanest process that I know of, and mind you, this is a first go around at it. It's working efficiently, but there's probably a better way to do it, right? There always is. But to open up escrow with yourself and a title exchange going into your LLC, and the liens are going to be paid. So you're not going to assume the loan in your LLC. You're going to pay off the loan in your name.
Right, but is TerraMint involved in that as almost like a referee of sorts? Is anyone guiding that, or could someone, as you said, take the money and run, not pay off the lien? Is that possible?
Well, they'd be eligible for a lawsuit, and any somebody that, so there's two answers to that question. Number one, if somebody owns their property free and clear, we believe that we would still open escrow and go through that process, but there wouldn't be any liens or debts to satisfy. However, they still need to exchange the title. And so they still have to send in the documentation that they've exchanged title in order for us to mint the tokens.
Well, okay, in all cases they have to exchange title, but I'm saying if they're in all cases they have to convey title, you know, and you described a free and clear home that makes up a small minority. If a property has a lien down the street and you transfer to an LLC and you wish to tokenize, is that loan paid internally? I mean, must that be made? Is there a requirement on TerraMint or from the blockchain itself to pay off the existing lien?
Yeah, so what we do is we hold so when people buy the tokens, it's put into a trust account. And no money is released until everything's been minted and the monies are put to the right place. So TerraMint's going to take their 3%. The money necessary to come to closing to exchange title is going to be sent to the title company. And at the end of it, the owner of the home would get the rest of the money. But TerraMint does act as having a trust account because the owner doesn't get the money.
Okay, so it's a bit of a clearance. So that means the homeowner would have to do some traditional efforts, like here's my Bank of America bank statement, here's my 800 number, here's my account number. And I know how a title company works for sure, but does TerraMint take those traditional steps of, is that done by people? Because the blockchain can't do that.
Well, no, I mean, so right now it's me. I'm the TerraMint consultant that's kind of facilitating it, and then also using my real estate knowledge and utilizing local real estate agents as well. A lot of the properties right now that we're attracting are people that were on the market that have been sitting on the market for 100+ days, and they find tokenization as a viable option, you know, for them instead of selling their property. So, I mean, that's what we're going through right now. But TerraMint does cooperate with, you know, the escrow companies and the contracts in place. And I think it's going to be a case by case. What we want is someone to not abide by.
Okay, well, given the state of the market where 100 days is unthinkable, it would have to be some commercial place that just is really not desirable at all, right? Industrial or commercial would never be a home unless it's grossly over asking.
You know, honestly, I think the residential market can speak clearly on that. With the commercial market, I've seen a huge decline in the $2 million to $15 million commercial space, to where people that would normally be pre-approved are not getting pre-approved. I've seen a huge decline in the ability for people to buy the $2 million to $15 million commercial spaces. And a lot of what I've also seen is the P&Ls for these properties going through COVID and what they're looking like. There's a lot of legwork that has to happen for a property or a hotel or any type of commercial space to be considered financeable. And so we have these sellers that need to sell. They didn't have the cash flow for the last 2 years, and now their properties are in shambles. They can't sell them. And buyers that want to buy, but they can't buy unless that property has all of the records necessary in order to sell for that price. And so I'm seeing a huge decline. In fact, there's a huge market for it, for commercial properties that are just sitting, good commercial properties that are just sitting. Even ones that, you know, can come with management in place. They can't afford to be in business, or they don't want to anymore.
Right. I mean, plus we're dealing with the, you know, the events of 2020 and the eviction moratorium. Yep. And so we're dealing with such negative consequences where that really would be the only way, that tokenization would be the only way for anyone to recoup any kind of liquidity. But let me ask you this: is there any contemplation? I mean, all the eviction moratoria are over. However, every market is anecdotal, because Brooklyn here in New York is different than, you know, Dutchess County. Those are extremes. But every state has extreme, distinctions between locations. is there any kind of due diligence or qualification or between a crazy urban area or a rural area, or is that just not a consideration?
I've seen a lot of properties that I'm going to take this multifamily in Florida, for example, because a 13-unit multifamily in Florida should never sit. It shouldn't sit an hour, much less 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. Now we're going on a year. And one of the biggest problems with anybody buying this property is that it's been used for verbo income for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And banks wanting to lend on verbo income. I've seen banks turn down anything that has to do with rental income and rental properties and anything to do that would be affected by the pandemic. And there are very little properties out there that have kept accurate records, and whether they're not keeping accurate records because they want to get out of taxes, right? Tax liability, or they're actually stating what's real and it's nothing that a bank wants to lend on. And then we have the qualifications for the buyer to have that property. Well, if the buyer wants to buy that property, now they need to come into closing or be able to show that income that can keep this property afloat for X amount of time as a verbo. And I'm seeing banks just not even want to lend on verbos.
Right.
So
and you say verbo, I mean, I know that means vacation rentals by owner. I did that for my properties. But the Airbnb acts as a settlement company because the money passes through them and they 1099 owners. So it seems to me that Airbnb would be an ideal way to demonstrate income and the factual history of rentals. So at least that's a way that you could point to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that we're going to see things, improve after we get into the summer, into next fall. I think that as banks call in notes, unfortunately, there are people that are going to be suffering, through foreclosure and whatnot, and banks calling their notes due and trying to get caught up. We're going to see more money freed up for, people getting, loans. But right now, whether you're in the vehicle industry or the housing industry or, just wanting to get a line of credit, things are tight. From what I'm seeing. And that may not be, the situation in the circles that you run in. I'm noticing that a lot of the stuff that I did off market last year and the last couple of years has really slowed down and things are sitting. And there's a lot of people out there that want to sell, and there's a lot of people out there that say they can buy until you actually put your name on the line. And then they're going, oh man, I don't know what happened. I guess I can't buy it.
Wow. So, I think there's, I think that there's an outlet that TerraMint and you have offered. It's rare to be sitting with the Lewis and Clark of an entire industry that we have people, you really are a pioneer of this world. I think, one day we're going to laugh at this. And there's a 1994 Katie Couric and Brian Gumbel Good Morning America show where they kept saying, what is this @ sign? I never heard of @ what people are using email. And they said, well, do you have email? No, I just use mail. I just pick up the phone. So now it's ludicrous to let that this was a thing. So I think one day, we'll be there where this could be in the not too distant future, a real viable alternative, or maybe even a normal transaction happening like this. But at least we know that the blockchain is here to stay, and TerraMint and Aleta, and these efforts are being made to break through.
Yep, absolutely, man. And I just pray that, a large brokerage like EXP is going to just come in and say, yes, we want this to be a part of our standards of practice. And, EXP is large enough to get the word out there, not only education for real estate agents, but education to the masses. Sure. And really through, maybe it's my way of doing law of attraction, just get it out there and say, hey, we need a larger voice to talk about tokenization, because people don't have to lose their homes. People don't have to lose their businesses, and people don't have to invest in projects that aren't going to pay them back, or that they're just going to take their money and run. TerraMint tokens is viable for buyers to make money. Any type of buyer.
This also speaks, because I hate all those fake fix or flip shows, Because when you see all this work and, yes, it's a great looking couple and they deal with the TV contractors and then they make $75,000 and I say, well, that's all capital gains. You can't have that $75,000. So now you're on a treadmill to do a 1031 forever and ever and ever and ever. What's fun about this? Painting a house on a weekend, and then you are married to this money and this effort forever. It doesn't, yes, it's great TV because very few people take part in it, and it's interesting and it's entertaining. But look at the possibilities of tokenization and realizing an instant gain and a benefit without any of the backbreaking labor of removing kitchen cabinets.
Yes. Absolutely. Those fix and flip and fix and flop shows, and I really wish they just come out and be honest on how much money they actually made. The labor alone, the materials alone, then they're like, oh, we have these 3 houses, and we're negotiating under market value. Get out of here with that. It's entertaining. I don't think they're probably posting any new ones now. They're probably not. They're not filming now.
But the only way they could be legitimate is if they would live there as a married couple 2 of the last 5 years, have a primary risk, and then you really can gain. But this concept of taking ownership in an LLC and never living in it and never taking a primary loan, and no one ever says the tax complications and implications at the end. So, I brought that up as a backdrop. The fact is that TerraMint and its offer of tokenization on the blockchain is really far superior to the normal investor.
Yeah, it really is. And now when I see, the news article of, the $14 million mansion bought with Bitcoin and, $500,000 house, sold to these people and, 25 million of that. I'm like, great. Now turn around and tokenize it. Get your money back. Get your liquidity back. What are you going to do? Now you have this mansion. You have to make updates. You have to do finance. There's so much things that you have to do to this property. And now it's not even cash flowing. Now it's a liability. It's not an asset. And the Grant Cardones of the world and, our real estate tycoons, I'm like, great. Now tokenize it and show people how to make it cash flow.
Wow. So they're really leaving, they're stopping short of the real benefit. That's because it's not known. So I think you and I overall, plus with the vast reach of EXP, will have a chance to really benefit people and show the professionals in the industry how there's another method, and maybe the best method.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how versatile it is. Anybody that owns real estate can tokenize their real estate property. Anybody that has anywhere from $500 to $100,000 and more can buy tokens, asset-backed securitized tokens in real estate, start building their portfolio on that, get an annual ROI from their investment. The homeowner is going to value tremendously by paying off their debts and liens and having cash flow, right? To have it's a real investment. It's a real asset. And depending on which real estate show you listen to, they say now that, real estate's not a viable investment or an asset. It's a liability, just like having a vehicle. Well, yeah, it can be. It can be, especially when it doesn't cash flow. But tokenization, allows those.
It does. Well, Aleta, we're going to wrap up, but Aleta Reynolds from TerraMint and eXp Realty, we thank so much for this really amazing information, really on the cutting or bleeding edge. We're doing our introductions in reverse. I'm Scott Forcino, with associate broker with eXp Realty and the founder of PlugIntro. I think it's so much value that to offer the public and to professionals. And we are here for the year in Aleta's video interview series within her own local business development platform, PlugIntro.com. And we're going to continue to spread the word and demonstrate how this platform, TerraMint, and its benefits to all. So thank you very much. We'll be back. We're going to invite Aleta and our industry colleagues, Aleta's contacts and our industry colleagues, to take a deeper dive into this subject and see how we all can improve the industry and ourselves. Thank you, Aleta. Talk soon.
Mm-hmm.